Hi, and welcome back to Your Future, Your Finances. We're talking more with Kevin Bress of Pest and Cats Law, based in Columbia and Towson, Maryland. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Brian.
We were talking about one's home as a very valuable asset before we went to break. What happens with a home when there's a situation with a nursing home? Someone might need to leave the home to go into a nursing home.
Well, it's interesting. You probably planned a vacation recently. A lot of people plan. They spend hours and hours getting all the details. They spend $3,000 or $4,000 on a vacation. And then we look at something like a home. How many hours have you planned with your home, and how many hundreds of thousands of dollars is your home worth? So what we try as estate planners to bring to the attention of our clients is, if suddenly a medical incident occurs and a family member might have to go not only to a hospital, but then rehabilitation, and finally they say you can't come home, you just need to stay in a nursing facility, what happens to the home? If they're a deer in the headlights and they do nothing, there's a good chance a lien would be put on the home by the state of Maryland in the course of applying for Medicaid, when all other assets have already been spent at the nursing home. So the goal is to think through what's the best way to preserve that home. One way that we're seeing a lot of people like doing, but it takes a discussion with your attorney, is a trust that owns the home. You need a trusted trustee.
Yes. And sometimes that doesn't always exist, so that makes, I guess, your job or their job harder. But
we like to think it's a family member who they trust, the oldest child, the smart child, the closest child, somebody like that. And so the trust owns the house, but the parent continues to live there. If the parent dies, the trust can do what we were talking about in the first segment. The trust can sell the house and distribute the money without any child squatting and trying to stay in the house and say, I own the bedroom. Or the trust can also insulate the property from the cost of long-term care because the parent doesn't own it technically anymore, and the children don't own it. So if they get in trouble, divorced, sued, something like that, they don't own it. Their name's not on the deed, so that's a good option.
And that's a particular kind of trust, not a unique, irrevocable type of trust, is that?
That's right. Irrevocable is an important term that you use because the parent can't have the flexibility to just take the property back. Otherwise, the state would say, oh, well, sell it, spend it, and see you later.
Right. Take it back and then give it to, sell it for our bill. That's
right.
Along the lines of more legal documents to have is one called a power of attorney, a very important document, it appears, I think. Sometimes people think this is built into their will, or they don't need it because they don't have any intention of ever getting sick or having something happen. But what's a power of attorney? How do you do one? What does it say?
And you make a good point about they think they don't need it, especially husband and wives, married couples who say, well, if I'm sick, he can do it. But you're a financial advisor, so let me ask you the question. You get a wife call you up and say, my husband's in the hospital, I need money to pay the taxes that came due for IRS. Please send me $10,000 from his IRA.
Right. Can't do that.
Can't do that unless she's authorized under a power of attorney. So I call it a fire extinguisher. It's an essential tool. We don't know if you'll need it. We don't know if you'll use it. But for a few $100s typically, this is something that should be in everybody's drawer, naming a spouse and then children, to be able to access those accounts for the principal person.
And it's always a separate document from your will. It cannot be written into your will. Is that right?
Exactly. The one is only valid when you're alive, power of attorney, and one is only valid after you die, which is the will.
There's another type of document called a living will. What's that?
That's so antiquated. I try to say to people, let's get that out of your vernacular. There are no more living wills. But that's the term a lot of people learned about this whole process of the right to die and giving advance direction. So we call it an advance directive now. But the new thing in Maryland is a document that the hospitals and doctors are supposed to present to their clients called Medical Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment, MOLST. So it's the MOLST form.
Okay.
A little bit of a challenge getting the tongue right on that one.
But that's controlled by the doctors.
It is
or
controlled.
administered.
Yes, they need to sign it to make it an official order. They put it in the patient's chart, and it says whatever you want it to say, but it basically says, I don't want to be resuscitated, I don't want to be intubated, I don't want tube feeding. So you get all those choices, but they want you to do that MOLST form if you're able. But if you're not able, have you appointed somebody in advance to fill that form out for you? And that's the critical legal document that we say to people, not a living will anymore, but an advance directive.
Anybody who's out there who's watching, other than making sure they get their documents done, recommendations, thoughts, tips for them?
Well, it was just recently I heard on the radio something like National Will Week or something like that. I don't know who got that started.
There's a lot of those nowadays. There's a lot of weeks and months.
And then that was followed by a commercial by one of the online will preparation companies.
Naturally.
And it made me think, people need to realize making a will is not like buying a shovel at the hardware store and you call around town and you see how much you can get that shovel for. It's about all the planning and thinking that goes into an estate plan. Most of the stuff we just talked about in 5 minutes. So, yeah.
Anybody who's watching who wants to get a hold of you, your website, email address?
Right. Our website is pklaw.com, pestandcatslaw.com, and I'm kbress at pklaw.com.
All right. Thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate it very much. Good tips for people watching. You're watching Your Future, Your Finances. We'll be right back. We're going to continue on this topic with another great guest. I'll be right back.